All right, guys, thanks for coming back. Let's just talk about some strategies for effective scraping. Get off on a good start here. What we're going to talk about is what sites to target based on your data needs, what to look for once you're on the site, and then also some targets that we'll be scraping in the course together, so you'll be able to use those as well. So when you're thinking about what site do you want to scrape and how you want to go about targeting the right site, it really helps to just work backwards from your data needs. So whatever your goal is. So if your goal is to put together a list of Twitter users that you want to communicate with about your product, based on something that they talk about in their Twitter stream, that's an example of data that you might need. If you want to put together a list of local businesses, you might want to consider scraping Yelp for those types of businesses. So the second part here is, where can you get that data? So once you've established your goal, you start looking for the spot where you can get that data. And so the ideal scenario here is that you can get it from one source. Because the less you have to build, the more effective you can be. But I will say, don't be afraid to get multiple sources of data. Don't be afraid to go out and take 5 different sources of data and combine them into one. You will have the ability to do that with the apps that we're using. So it is something that can be really, really powerful if you can combine sets of data about one user or one company, etc., from multiple different sources. So don't be afraid of that, but optimally, if you can reduce the amount of sites that you have to go out and scrape and go after, there's less maintenance, less setup, and oftentimes you're just going to have an easier run of it. So don't be afraid of multiple, but optimally go for one source when you have a chance. And then the last thing here is that structured data is very much your friend. So the more structure a site has, the more clean a site has, or site is in that scenario is going to make things a lot easier for us. So the scraping tool import.io that we're going to be using recognizes patterns. So the more structured the data, the easier it is to recognize those patterns. So that's really, really helpful for us. And then additionally, I will say that you also, as well, when you're cruising around looking for different places to scrape, you should be in your browser looking for different patterns on how the links are structured, how the URLs are structured, anything like that you can use going into it to identify a pattern will make your scraping a lot easier. And then lastly, I will say that structured data oftentimes does bring quality with it as well. So if somebody's taken the time to put structured data in place, such as Yelp, that means a lot of times the data that they have in there is going to be better data than if it wasn't structured. It's not always the case, but most of the time there is something to be said for somebody putting the time into and effort into put things into structure like that, and then label and tag things in a certain way that will help us get the data out that we want. So keep an eye out for that. Speaking of Yelp, here's an example of what we might want to consider in terms of targeting. So if our goal is to find local restaurants that serve pizza, and then maybe even on top of that, local restaurants that serve pizza but also have Wi-Fi, because if that's important to our product, it's something we want to include. Where can we get it? Yelp, obviously. And then obviously Yelp has a lot of really structured data. So that example that I gave at the top with the Wi-Fi element, Yelp would not only allow us to pull down an entire list of local pizza restaurants, but they would also allow us to target the ones that have Wi-Fi in their shops there too. So it can be a really, really, really helpful place to start when you're trying to target small businesses. So that's just an example of one target that we might do. And here's a little bit broader set of examples. So Yelp is something that a lot of people want to scrape all the time, so we'll spend a considerable amount of time on that in the course. There's also Crunchbase. Crunchbase is a pretty good example of a site that also has an API, but because I'm gearing this course towards folks that are non-technical, API access might not be something that you have and are able to take advantage of yourself. So rather than taking resources away from an engineering department or even paying a developer on the side to integrate into Crunchbase for you, what we're going to do instead is we're going to go through and scrape the parts of Crunchbase that we need and get that data out of there so that we can access it. Additionally, we'll be going after Reddit and Hacker News and grabbing some data from different sections of the site that we think might be helpful to us. For instance, if you know what sites are getting shared the most on Reddit, maybe there's a guest posting opportunity for you there to go out and get your guest post on that site, and then increasing the amount of chances that somebody would share that post into Reddit organically for you. So that obviously represents an opportunity for us as well. So these are just a couple of the targets. Like I said, we are going to be continuing to expand on this course. Every week we'll be sharing new scrapes with the community, and hopefully you will be as well. And we'll be taking even requests for different things to get scraped if people are having trouble with it. So yeah. The other thing I kind of want to touch on is oftentimes when you're talking about scraping, it can get a bad connotation or a bad rap, and it really raises some questions for a lot of people. I don't really want to spend a lot of time on this. If you want to scrape a site, it's up to you that you want to scrape it, but if you want to kind of educate yourself, there's 3 things that you can do. One is read the terms and service and the terms of use of the site. So if there's something in the site that says you shouldn't scrape this site, you shouldn't be going about this way, then that's something that you can take into consideration and decide how you want personally to proceed. And then when in doubt, talk to your lawyer. So I'm not a lawyer. I'm not giving you any legal advice. All I will say is that if you have a real question about is the data that I'm grabbing legal, or is it legal for me to be grabbing this data and then using it in the way I plan to use it, a lawyer should be the one to answer that for you. So when in doubt, talk to your lawyer. Additionally, educate yourself on the issues. So I'm going to be sharing a bunch of links here at this link here, scraper or bit.ly/scraper.not. I'll share a bunch of different links that kind of help educate you on the ethics of scraping and the discussion. Besides that, later on in the courses, I actually go through some different things that you should consider as best practices as to not harm the websites that you're crawling. It is possible to crawl a website and make too many requests and take the website down and those sorts of things. So I'll be showing you how to avoid doing that so that you're not seen as a malicious force on that site. Rather, what we're going to be focusing on is scraping responsibly and just getting information out of the sites as easily and efficiently as we can. So that's all the rest that I'll actually cover on this subject. So if you have any other questions, go to the resources that I link you to. Otherwise, feel free to start a discussion if you really think it's something that you need to chat about. One last thing I'll leave you with before we head into the rest of the tutorials. Just be ready to experiment and to learn. Scraping, especially when you do your first couple on sites that you've never done before, is something that will take iteration. It will take some time to learn. It will take effort for you to optimize the process. So don't get hung up necessarily on, is this the fastest possible way for me to get this data right away? Over time, you'll get better at it. You'll get a better understanding of it, and you'll make different changes that'll improve things. So I will say that I will be including some of the scrapes of Yelp that I've done previously in the tutorial here, and I will say that it took me a really long time to figure out through experimentation how to get the scraper to work properly on Yelp, because it threw up some different barriers. So that's also why I wanted to go through how web scraping works with you in the last video, so that you have a better idea of what you're going to be facing and what kind of just experimentation and changes that you might want to make. So anyways, I'm really excited to dig in with you. A couple other things here. Make sure that you're sharing your data. And then also suggest other targets in the community here. I just want this to be a really active community and want people to be sharing the data that we're extracting and sharing in the victory that web scraping can be for your business. Beyond that, let's dig into the other tutorials here and start scraping.